अंतरिक्षं शांति पृथिवी शांतिर आपः शांतिर ओषधयः शांतिः वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्विश्वे देवाः शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्ति सर्वं शान्ति शान्तिरेव शान्ति सामा शान्तिरेधि ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ Om, may peace expand in the celestial realm and throughout space. May peace spread over the entire earth and pervade the waters. May peace glow in all herbs and vegetation. May there be peace for all the deities and gods. May there be peace in Brahman, the Absolute. May there be peace everywhere and always. Peace and nothing but peace. May peace grow within us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto you all. In the first two sessions, we have learned that everything that we are experiencing, that we are seeing, that we are dealing with are divided into three categories. These three things are, the three categories are, the three groups are the individual, self, soul, the God, divine or Brahman, and the world, the universe. If you think everything, you can find these three things. Everything circling round among these three things. We, I, the universe, and the divine, the God, Brahman. These three things. In our previous session, we have discussed about self, the individual. There are 5 levels in each individual. And how does an individual motivates, behaves, reacts, thinks? All those things we have discussed in previous sessions. In this session, we are going to discuss on the universe, the world, because unless we will have clear idea about these three things and the relation between these three, it is very difficult to jump into spiritual life. To develop a distinct spiritual attitude or outlook. In this session, we are going to discuss about the world. Let me share the PowerPoint again. The world or universe. Okay. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna, he categorized the whole humanity in 4 groups. But again, before going to this matter, I shall remind you again the very important dictum, that is how our attitudes towards ourselves, according to that we see God, we see the world. This is another example of that particular principle. A question was asked in the previous session that what is the example of that? Here is the example of that, that according to our attitude towards ourselves, our perception about ourselves, we see the world, we see God. And Lord Krishna in chapter 7 very clearly described the 4 types of human being. Here is the chart, and you can find these 4 types of human beings. The characteristics of human being is given here. Sorry. No. Yes. The types of human being are given here, and the attitude. See, the first is Artha, who wants to escape from the suffering. There are people, Sri Krishna grouped these people in this way. There are people who are called Artha in Sanskrit, means those who want to escape from suffering. They are called Artha. So what is the attitude of them towards the world? Their attitude, they think themselves helpless, suffering people. So their attitude towards the world is helpless and submissive. Then Artharthi, another second group is Artharthi, Sanskrit Artharthi, who wants wealth and power. These people are wanting wealth and power. What is the attitude towards the world of these people? Their attitude is aggressive. They are more aggressive towards the world because their attitude upon themselves, because they want wealth, the power. The next is Jigyashu. These people seeks to understand the mystery of life. They are curious. So what is the attitude towards world of these people? Their attitude is they are inquisitive and want to search, explore, ask question, find. They are very curious of everything. So this is their attitude towards this world. And the 4th category is Jnani. They want to see God realization. What is their attitude towards the world? Detachment. They are detached, very passive. Their attitude towards the world is passive. So this is world we see. So what is the impression? What is the perception we have about ourselves? We see the world in that way. And our attitude towards the world, just like that. And how in different schools of Vedanta hold different views regarding the nature of the world. Broadly, it can be divided in two categories. What is the nature of the world? How we can see this world? In two broad categories, we can see it. That is, sorry, just 1 minute. I think it is different. Just 1 minute. Let me see whether it is in this way or not. Oh no, it is okay. So broadly, it is in two categories. We shall come to that point afterwards. One is real and another is unreal. Now the question is how they define the word real and truth. The difference among themselves, the definition of real or unreal or truth. But all the groups, they accept that ultimate cause of the universe is spiritual intrinsic Brahman. And it is in the process of evolution and involution the universe came into existence. They differ on the point that whether universe is evolved from Brahman, or it is the shadow of Brahman, or it is the creation of the mind, or it is the transformation of Brahman. They all accept that world came out from Brahman, but they differ from each other on different points, that whether it is the shadow of Brahman or creation of the mind, or it is transformed Brahman. Accordingly, different views, different philosophical schools developed, like Brahma Parinama, Shakta Parinamavada, Mayavada, Ajatavada, Drishti Srishti Vada, Vibharta Vada. These are the different schools of Vedanta. So only this point, whether it is the shadow of Brahman or it is the transformation of Brahman, how it is related, how this world is related with Brahman. On this point, they differ from each other and different philosophical schools developed. But for our spiritual purpose, and from all these views, we have to remember three main characteristics of this universe, which has been accepted by all the Indian philosophical schools. We have to remember three main characteristics of this universe. From the point of view of spirituality, these are the three important characteristics of this universe. Number one, polarity. Number two, change. And number three, unity. These are the three main characteristics of this world. We have to remember this, and our outlook towards the world should be from these 3 point of views. Let us discuss one by one. First is the polarity. Polarity means these two things. All empirical experiences occur in pairs. Everything, what we have the experience, everything occurs in pair. As for example, knowledge and the opposite ignorance, we have the ignorance, we have knowledge. We have happiness, we have sorrow. We have good, we have bad. We have virtue and vice, and so forth. So everything is in pair. Swami Vivekananda, in one place, he said, that is completely utopian to seek only happiness. We never have. It is the rule of this creation. So this polarity, we have to accept this polarity in our spiritual life. So universal and invariable is this phenomenon that it should be regarded as the fundamental law of existence. If we understand and accept this law of polarity, we will not be surprised at the sorrow, suffering, cruelty, injustice, and wickedness that we have to encounter everywhere in the world. But we have to learn to bear them with equanimity and dignity. So how we can do that? We shall come to that point. All these questions I am just piling up, and we shall come one by one. How we have to keep in Bhagavad Gita. If you go again in Bhagavad Gita, you can find in different chapters, starting from chapter 2, throughout that beautiful scripture, Sri Krishna only taught us how we can maintain the equanimity of mind, a balanced mind. That is the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita's main teaching is how to maintain, and that is the highest goal of human life, according to Bhagavad Gita. To maintain the equanimity of mind, the balanced mind. That is what Bhagavad Gita taught us. So, to face this polarity, we have to accept that, and we have to keep our mind undisturbed, unperturbed towards all these polarity. Without acquiring inner strength, it is impossible to lead a meditative life. There is a lot of problems, obstacles we will have in our spiritual life. And unless we have inner strength, we cannot face that. It is only by accepting the polarities of life that we can rise above all kind of polarities and cultivate the attitude of witness, which is so much necessary for a peaceful life. What will give us the inner strength? We shall come to that point, but for the time being, I would suggest 3 things what we can maintain. Number 1, forbearance, titiksha. It is in our Indian scripture. Titiksha has been emphasized again and again in Bhagavad Gita, in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, in Upanishad, This is one of the important quality to become a spiritual personality. So forbearance, and it is not humbleness, it is not, meek, and it is not kind of surrender or impotency. It is a, it gives, forbearance gives us inner strength. Second is forgiveness. We must forgive. And third is pratipoksha bhavana, the opposite thinking. This opposite thinking is itself a big topic. We do not have much time or scope to explain this pratipoksha bhavana in this session. But pratipoksha bhavana in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, if we go, you can find the pratipoksha bhavana. The main theme of pratipoksha bhavana is this: you have to think the opposite thinking. Very common example is that when you are attending a very, luxurious party and taking plenty of foods and all these things, a lot of joy and fun. If you think at that point of time that there are lots of people, those who are hungry, those who are poor, cannot get anything. So this is called opposite thinking, pratipoksha bhavana in Sanskrit. It is very much in vogue. It is very important concept, spiritual practice in Buddhism. In Patanjali Yoga Sutra also, it gives. And again, another short example is that of pratipoksha bhavana. Always any thought comes in our mind with name, form, and emotion. Every thought of us is connected with name and form and emotion. So if you disconnect name and form with emotion, immediately that thought will go. It is a very easy and important technique how we can change our mind. We can control our mind in this way. It is called pratipoksha bhavana. Every thought comes in our mind with name and form, which is connected with emotion. As for example, if I want to eat a rasagulla, then this thought comes to my mind with the name of rasagulla, with the form of rasagulla. I visualize the form of rasagulla and name of rasagulla, and it is connected with my emotion. Unless emotion is connected with that, it is very difficult to make it actualize. So if we can disconnect that, how can we disconnect the emotion and name and form? Either you replace name and form with some other thing. Instead of thinking rasagulla and all these things, if we think some kind of other thing, as for example, which is bitter, which is other different type, which is not good taste. So if we think that kind of thing, then immediately our thought will go. Or if we can change the emotion to the other direction, means emotion is connected with some higher thing. Instead of rasagulla, if we can connect it with some higher ideal. As for example, study, reading, our motivation, our higher goal, our success, higher success in life. So if we connect it towards that, immediate our thought will go. It is a matter of practice. Nothing we can achieve without practice. So it is simple practice, mechanical practice. So this is Pratipaksha Bhavana. So these three things are necessary to face the polarities of this world. Number one, forbearance. Number two, forgiveness. And number three, Pratipaksha Bhavana. All these practices will give us inner strength. And then we can face the challenges of these polarities. The second thing we have to accept of this world is change. Change means the impermanence. Everything is changing. It is the fundamental concept of Buddhism. Everything is changing. Nothing is permanent in this universe. We have to take it for granted. Everything is changing. Everything will change. There may be difference of opinion among the religious teachers as the way that the world is real or unreal, but they all agree that it is impermanent. So impermanence of worldly objects and pleasure find poignant expression in the great Indian epic Ramayana. We can find Ramachandra, he actually expressed it in very beautiful way. He taught this to Bharata. In Ramayana, we see that he tells Bharata, in Sanskrit, I can translate it to English again. Sarve Shayanta Nichayaha. Sarve, everything. Shayanta, destroys. Nichaya, everything. Patananta Samuchaya. Sangyogo Viprayoganta. Maranantam Cha Jivitam. He says that all that is earned will be spent. All that is built will fall down. All that is brought together will be separated. And the life ends in death. So everything is changing. That is the first lesson to be learned in spiritual life, is to reduce one's dependence on impermanent things. So everything is changing, impermanent. So we must not depend on any impermanent thing. That teachings we got from Katha Upanishad. Yama, the Lord of Death, taught Nachiketa these particular teachings. He said, "No hya dhrubai prapyate hi dhrubam tat." He said, the permanent reality cannot be attained through impermanent thing. We want everything should be eternal, permanent. But how can any permanent thing will come from impermanent thing? It is illogical. So it is the truth. We have to understand this, that we should not depend on any impermanent thing. The change, we have learned that change means impermanence. But it is not only impermanence, the change means time also. Time plays an important role in spiritual life. Change means time. What is the measurement of time? How do we measure time? Again, there is not much scope to this retreat or in this session to talk in detail about time, but it is interesting topic. So the change means time. Time is nothing but change. If there is no change, there is no time. So changeless means timeless. Though the spirit is changeless, according to Indian philosophy, and infinite, as long as it inhabits the physical body as soul, it is bound by time. And when we go beyond this physical plane, there is no time. So it is infinite. So there is a Indian concept is the cyclic time. The time is in cycle. Life is vast system of wheels within wheels. We wheel along one wheel to another wheel, So it is a time frame. So one time to another time. We die and then again we are born. So this is one time. A whole lifetime is nothing but a time. It is a time frame. So we are bound. That is why we find one life, another life. So one life and another life is a change, and it is a time. So this is the change. And the third one, what we should keep in our mind is the unity. So in spiritual life, we have to go beyond to, we have to learn to strike a balance between conservation and waste, between conservation, between construction and destruction, between time and timeless. So all these polarities, we have to learn how to manage, how to face these polarities and change, and the change of time. Then the third thing is come the unity. You see, all these polarities, all these change and impermanence, there lies an unity. In the midst of that, there is an unity. This is the excellent teachings of Vedanta, that there is an underlying unity. If there is no unity, there is nothing. We cannot hold anything else. It is the basic solidarity of life. Life, with its polarities and ceaseless change, may appear to be discontinuous, discursive, but behind all these apparent diversity, there is the fundamental unity of consciousness, which can be realized only by transcending sense-bound world. In the physical plane, this transcendent unity finds a partial expression through love. That is why love is very important in spiritual life. In physical plane, love, if it is not connected with senses, if it is pure love, this is the expression. It is very closer to our consciousness. So just as love, it is very similar to consciousness. So through love in worldly plane, this unity expresses. Love is unity. We all have intrinsic love. Love is inborn. From where love came, love never depends upon anything else. It is inborn, intrinsic, primordial. And love everyone. Love is infinite. You cannot measure love. You cannot make love finite. Love is infinite. Love breaks any kind of barriers. Love makes us one. Swami Vivekananda gave the definition of love, that loves make one, unite. Love unites us. Love makes us one. We are different personalities, but love makes us one. So this is the uniqueness of love. When love is misunderstood and misdirected, love leads to delusion and bondage. But when raised to its universal dimension, it leads to illumination and freedom. Whether one follows the path of knowledge or the path of devotion, or any spiritual aspirant should understand the basic unity of life and the meaning and purpose of love. So in Jnana Yoga also, those who are following the path of Jnana Yoga, for them, love is also very important aspect. And it is the oneness. It makes us one. We don't know the soul or spirit, what is the nature of that, but we can understand love. Love is the synonym of self or spirit. Love is universal, all pervaded. Our self or spirit or Atman is all pervaded. Love doesn't have name and form. Our self or spirit or Atman doesn't have name and form. Everyone has self and spirit or Atman. Everyone has love. It is within. So if love, we can understand love and we can just go deeper into the intrinsic nature of love, that will give us freedom. So it is very important to understand this unity. All these diversities, there exist unity. So this is the characteristics of this universe. In the morning, we have understood the individual self, that there are 5 different levels, and through 5 different levels, we see this universe. When we see this universe through the lower levels, lower 3 levels, we cannot understand the polarities, the change, and unity. But when we see it in the higher level, then we know this world has the characteristics of polarities. We have to accept that. If there is good, there is bad. We have to accept the bad also in a good spirit. Yes, there is bad. We have to face bad because this is the law of nature. This is the law of this creation. We have to accept the change also. We cannot be, we can try from outside, but we cannot hold our age. We cannot tie down our age in a particular fixed point. So change is must. Impermanence. This whole thing is impermanent. We must not depend on any kind of impermanence. And the third, still there is unity. We all are one. And the practical worldly expression of that oneness is love. And the higher expression of that is self or spirit or Atman. Now we can have some questions. Floor is open for question. Hello.
We don't. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, yeah, let me know. I can unmute you or type your question in the chat box. Okay, there's a question, Sandeep.
Yes, please.
Polarity and change is very evident in our experience of the world. However, the unity is not so visible. Why is that?
Yes, because unity is underlying. Take the example of a garland. When you see a garland is consisting of different flowers. The flowers has different colors, different fragrance, different characteristics. But all different types of flowers are threaded, are connected by a underlying thread. That thread is the unity. You cannot see the thread because it is underlying. So that's why we cannot understand or visible. This unity is not visible. Unity is visible, but we do not have that eye to see it, to find it. Love is visible, but unfortunately, we try to understand love in a different connotation, in a different way. We try to understand this love because of our ignorance. We cannot see this unity because of our ignorance.
Next question. Is love and unity the same thing?
Yeah, it is almost synonymous because the unity is the principle, the love is the expression.
The next one is, how should one love so that it does not generate attachment?
It is taught by Yagyavalkya in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Everything is there in our scripture. Yagyavalkya taught his wife in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad that a husband loves his wife not as she is his wife. Loves because why we do love another person? Because of beauty, because of body, because of mind, because of anything. When a person dies, everything is intact. But why don't we love? At that time, we may love, but our expression of love is different. Still we love, definitely we love, but why then we reject that body? So love is a different dimension. We have to understand. We do not love the body. We do not love the beauty. This is a disguise. Love in disguise. So actually we love the inner essence, the consciousness of that person. But we don't understand that. We don't realize that. That's the problem. So when we can understand that and try to understand why do we love another person, not because of his or her beauty, of his or her body, of his or her, because of his or her consciousness. We love that because we are one. Love is one. Consciousness is one. That is why we are one. The love what I have, the same love another person is having. So we are one. Maybe the outcome of love, the expression of love, there is difference because of ignorance, because of some desire, because of some impurities, but the love is universal, one, and equal to each other. That's the point. We cannot understand that. If we practice to understand this thing, if we exercise our intelligence to understand these things, then we can understand. That is what Yajnavalkya taught his wife, that husband loves his wife or wife loves her husband, not as husband, but he or she loves the essence, the consciousness. That is why we love each other. And death is the example.
A question. We try to attain permanence by meditation, etc. But meditation itself is not a permanent thing.
Yes, you are perfectly right. We shall come to this point. We shall come to sadhana point afterwards. Now we are dealing with the principles. Then we shall slowly come to the sadhana part of it. We have not entered into the meditation and sadhana part of it. We are try to understand right now the external things. What should be our relation with all those things? Because it is very important. Unless we understand it very clearly, we cannot meditate. Because meditation is directly connected with our understanding. Because our perception depends on our understanding. How I am looking everything. What is my concept about this world? What is my concept about everything? So that depends on our goal orientation. I shall come to that point.
Love is directed at objects. Can love be abstract? How can love be permanent?
Love is already permanent. Love is already permanent, eternal. There is what is the definition of eternity? The definition of eternity is this: which has a beginning, that has an end. Which has a beginning and end, that is not eternal. Do you think love has a beginning? When love started? We don't know. Only we find the expression of love in an individual when he is born or she is born. But when love started, we don't know that. Love doesn't have the beginning, doesn't have the end. Again, you see, we have to understand who we are. That depends on our outlook of everything. So that is why love is eternal, because it has no beginning and no end.
This feeling for love with everything sometimes comes and then goes away. Can we make it permanent?
What is that? Can you repeat this question?
The feeling for love, this feeling of love with
Uh-huh.
everything sometimes comes and sometimes goes away.
First of all, the feeling is the emotion, Emotion is connected with mind. Mind fluctuates. But love is a principle. It is not connected with emotion. It is not connected with our mind. So that's why when love comes and goes, because it is connected with our mind. It is the nature of our mind to fluctuate. So when we can understand love as a eternal principle, as a self, then we can understand that love is eternal. But it is difficult to understand. We have to go beyond that. It is little time consuming, and it is a matured spirituality. It is the advanced spirituality. So it is difficult to understand that. It is little difficult to understand that. But it is, which is not connected. We have to go beyond mind. So that is why then we can understand love is eternal. Love is a principle. As long as love is connected with our mind, it will fluctuate. What we have to do, we have to reduce it slowly by our spiritual practice. We have to reduce this connectivity of our mind slowly, slowly, slowly. That is what called sadhana.
Um, I think this is more of a comment, or not sure is a question. The example of water and wave and foam, and the waves and the foam is an example of unity. The clay and pot all point to the substratum. Name, form are all unreal. They are unreal to the water wave does not exist. To the water wave does not exist.
Yeah, but what is the question?
Tapas, you can ask the question directly if there is a question or a comment.
Yeah, I was trying to comment because we were talking about unity, the substratum, right? We were talking about consciousness. And, I was thinking from this perspective that how do we get to that thought process that we are actually all consciousness? How do we remove all the
Yeah, yes. If you remove the name and form, which is the wave of the ocean, then we can find the unity, and because everything is ocean.
if we all can think, Maharaj, I was thinking if we all can think we are that basic substratum, then that concept of love and unity.
Yes, because it is difficult for everyone to think that particular thing, and we do not suggest also to suggest everyone to think one particular thing. We shall come to that point afterwards, that how a person should think, how a person should practice his or her spiritual thinking. We shall come to that point afterwards. So,
Shivam Tomar, I think he has a follow-up question
yeah.
for the earlier one. If the love is a fluctuation of mind, if you go beyond it by sadhana, then what will feel it?
Yeah. We feel that love will universal, it is unity, it is all pervading, all powerful, that we shall experience if we go beyond the mind. There will be no polarity, there will be no change. That is what we will experience if we go beyond the mind.
So the experience the underlying thing is the experience belongs to the mind. So if you go beyond the mind,
Yes,
what
yes, yes. All experience, because how does experience come? Experience comes in vritti. If there is no vritti, we do not have any experience. And vritti is changing, So vritti is connected with the mind. Even here is the question: if everything comes in the form of vritti, then how the experience, because experience is vritti, then how this experience of Brahman comes? It comes as a vritti. So if it comes as a vritti, then how Brahman is eternal? That is a very interesting question asked in the scripture. It is called Brahmakara vritti. This is a special type of vritti which doesn't depend on mind. So this Brahmakara vritti, this vritti of Brahman, experience of Brahman, it doesn't have any remnant. It doesn't have any residual part. So it itself dies down. So it is a special type of vritti. So that has been described there. And they gave some example also, that in from the common life, they gave the example that the onion, what is the residual of onion? If you peel onion, what you will get? You will get nothing. So if the pot is there by the side of an ocean and ocean water is there. So if you break the pot, where the ocean will go? If a empty cup is there, if you break the empty cup, where the emptiness will go? So exactly, it is the Brahmakara vritti is also like that. It comes out of Brahmakara and it will go, it is not there actually. It is a kind of special type of experience. So that is the answer scripture gives for Brahmakara vritti, the experience of Brahman.
Another question. Can you please elaborate on why the principle of love is absolute or permanent? How is love defined?
Okay, love is very difficult to define. What is love? We can see, as it is very difficult to define self or spirit or soul or Atman, exactly in the same way, it is very difficult to define what is love, because both are in same nature. It is eternal, it is permanent, it is all pervading. It is, so that's why it is very difficult to explain love. The few things are there we cannot explain. We cannot explain what is light. Only we can give some uh, effect of life. We can give some effect of love. That much we can give. What is self? What is consciousness? It is very difficult to give the definition of consciousness. But we can see the effect of consciousness. So exactly in the same way, it is very difficult to define what is love. It is a principle and it is all pervading. It is uniting everyone. So we have to understand in this way. It is the expression. We cannot define love because it is, Sri Ramakrishna gave the example in Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna that how you feel, what is the taste if you ask in Naradiya Bhakti Sutra, Narada says that if a deaf person tastes sweet, then how can he or she expresses that? In Sanskrit, it is called Mukha Swadanavat. So it is Mukha Swadanavat. It is, you cannot express. A deaf and dumb person cannot express what is the taste of a sweet. It is just like that. We cannot express what is our feeling. Can we express our feeling in words? It is impossible. The feeling we express in words, that is not sufficient. So love is that kind of thing. It is a kind of mukha swadanavat. A deaf and dumb people, when tests, they cannot express. It is only the experience. Love is experience. Love is feeling. Love is deeper feeling.
There's another question, I think, but then this question can be taken up. We have break time.
No, this is the last question we shall take if it is connected with this, and we can, oh, we are already late actually.
Yeah.
Okay, we shall take this question afterwards.
Okay.
Okay.
What is Buddhi Yoga mentioned in chapter 2 of Gita? Is it different?
No, this we shall not take this question actually. It is afterwards, it is private question.
Okay. Otherwise, that's all.
Anybody this kind of question, I am always there. Please ask me afterwards or in any other time, or write it to Ask Swami through our website. I am happy to give this answer. Okay, I think we can take the break now.
So we'll assemble back at
just 10 minutes, after 10 minutes.
It's now 4:05, so 4:15.
Yes. Set up ourselves. We got the concept of the world, how we should see the world. And now the God, most important point, God. Let me share the screen again. Okay. So the God, according to Indian scripture, the God is dual and non-dual. And then dual is saguna. Saguna means with attribute. And non-dual God is nirguna, means there is no attribute. Attribute means the qualities. Name, form, all these adjective, the qualities are saguna, the quality. And the non-dual aspect is there is no quality. Without name, without form. So this is non-dual God. And dual God has name, form, power, creation. So he created this universe. So this is called saguna, and all these attributes and qualities. And nirguna means there is no qualities, attributes, etc. Name and form, etc. Now we have to accept one for spiritual life, because this is our goal. We have to realize that. We have to realize God, or we have to realize self. If it is nirguna God, then it is almost same to our Atman self. So we have to realize what is our concept about that. Which one shall we choose? That is the most important question. Shall we go there? Shall we choose this one, or shall we choose this one? That is a very important question. It is not merely a matter of liking and disliking. I shall come to that point. Which of this concept one should accept as one's chosen ideal? This is not merely a choice between liking and disliking. But the choice should be based on one's concept of oneself. Again, here is another example of this. So, what is our concept about ourselves? That is most important point, and accordingly we have to understand this. If one's attitude towards God is not properly correlated to one's attitude towards oneself, spiritual practice will become unrealistic and unfruitful. It is not, some bias selection. So we have to be very careful of this. What is the criteria? Only a person who looks upon himself or herself as impersonal spirit can accept Nirguna Brahman as his or her ideal. Please try to understand this. What is my conception about myself? What is my perception about myself? Those who has his or her impression upon his or her herself as a spirit, they can accept Nirguna Brahman as ideal. Similarly, in order to worship God as Supreme Person, it is not enough to look upon oneself as only human being. I am human being and that is God. It is not enough. But it is necessary to look upon oneself as a luminous spiritual person, because God is effulgent. God is bright. So one has to think oneself a luminous spiritual person. So this is very important. So that's why our impression on ourselves depends upon everything. There is another third approach to it regarding God. The third approach to reality was advocated by Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. That is personal and impersonal. And all the various avatars and deities are regarded as the manifestation of the Supreme Divine Person. An aspirant begins by meditating on one particular deity, known as chosen deity or something, meditate deity. As the meditation deepens, he or she discovers the spiritual center. I have already mentioned what is called spiritual center or spiritual heart. So that is they find it that. And all the various, so slowly develop spiritual center, feels divine. And then the presence in the self within, so realizes the chosen thing. As meditation deepens, they discover the spiritual center within their own true self, in the spiritual heart. Advancing further, when they begin to feel the divine presence in themselves, they realize their chosen deity as Supreme Person who dwells in all beings as the Supreme Self. So first is finding the spiritual center. Next step, when we find the spiritual center, feels divine presence within. Then realizes chosen deity and supreme person dwelling there. So we feel that somebody is, in Sanskrit it is called antaryamin. So somebody is dwelling, some spirit is working, guiding us. That is our force, that is our strength. So we can surrender them, surrender that inner force, that inner awareness. So that is the second step. Then realize the unity of individual self and the supreme self. That is the third step. But before that, they realize that we are all one. That is the experience they have. So these are different steps. First, spiritual center, then feeling of divine within, then we can find that somebody is dwelling inside or something is dwelling inside and we are one. So we feel the unity with other human beings. And then final unity of the supreme self. So these are the different steps in spiritual life we experience. In this synthetic approach, so this is the approach of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. In this synthetic approach, man's view of God changes in proportion to change in his view on in himself. So as the intensity and the devotion towards divine, supreme changes according to the change of our views on ourselves. And Swami Vivekananda had said that aspirant progresses not from error to truth, but from truth to truth, from lower truth to the higher truth. The whole of spiritual life is looked upon as a continuous unfoldment of divinity lying dormant in the human soul. Since the individual self, in its real nature, is the part of the supreme self, the more it realizes its true nature, the closer it moves towards God. Thus, self realization and God realization becomes one. So, why we say that God realization is the self realization? It is because our concept of God depends on our concept of ourselves. The more we discover ourselves, the more we go closer to God. And ultimately, God realization is the self realization. The integral nature of the spiritual ideal has been beautifully expressed by Swami Vivekananda in his famous definition that religion is the manifestation of the divinity already in man. So it is the unfoldment of individual personality. The more we unfold, the more we come closer to the divine. This integral view of reality developed by Swami Vivekananda is the ideal of the spiritual life. And it is a comprehensive search for God, comprehensive concept of God. That is what Swami Vivekananda said. So these are the different steps we find. So our selection for God or chosen ideal depends on our concept on ourself. If we think ourself is the spirit, then we have to choose the Nirguna Brahman. If we think ourselves as a human being, not only the human being, but an illumined human being, then we have to choose the personal God. And then we have to develop the spiritual heart within. So, spiritual heart is not any physical point or any physical place. It is a kind of awareness. It is not physical heart or physical point where we can develop in our body. It is a kind of awareness. I have already mentioned, Sri Ramakrishna gave the beautiful example of it, the toothache. If we have some kind of toothache, we do our work always, but our mind is always connected with that pain. Exactly in the same way, we can do everything, our day to day work, but always some part of our mind should occupy with the thought of divine, with the thought of our chosen deity, with the awareness of our spirit. So that it is the development of spiritual heart. When we sit for meditation, we find some kind of holding within at this same intensity every day, and then we can meditate there, particular that point, particular that awareness. So that is called spiritual heart or center of consciousness. So first we have to develop that one. If we do not, if we not develop that one, or if we haven't developed yet that one, so we have to careful about that, and we have to develop that. Then we can understand that, okay, now it is the time for proceed. And how we can develop that? It is good living, pious living, and regular practice of meditation. So this is the only way we can find it. We shall come to that point afterwards, when in our sadhana part, in the practice part. But that is the thing. It is not very hard to find our spiritual heart. It is only practice, sincere, serious practice. That is only thing. It is not mechanical practice. I shall come to next part, that why our meditation and seeking for divine is not sometimes fruitful. Why we cannot achieve the desired level, even if we try very seriously. I shall come to that point in our next part. But for this part is that what is our concept about the God, and what are the steps we have to experience and we must experience. So to sum up, this is today's. So to sum up the whole thing is that, and I suggested the third approach of the concept of God, which is personal and impersonal, both. That is the approach of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. So the point is that if we just sum up today's whole thing, it is like that we must develop the intention, Shraddha, within us. And then we have three things our individual self, world, and God. And we must have some kind of attitude towards these three things, which depends upon only one thing, and that is our attitude towards ourselves. And the whole process is the internal process. It is nothing is in outside. Everything is the mental and psychological exercise. So our attitude towards ourselves, that is the main thing. So our attitude, if we sum up our attitude towards ourselves, definitely we try to keep our center of consciousness at the intuitive level, which is called Vijnanamaya Kosha. Then our concept about the world, we have to accept three polarities. One is polarities, one is change, and another is unity. We have to accept that. That is our concept towards this world. And towards God, personal, impersonal. But what we are thinking about ourselves, if we think ourselves about the spirit, then our concept about God will be impersonal. And if we think ourselves not only the human being, but the illumined human being, the self, the glory of self, then we would choose the personal God. Then we shall start the practice. Because fulfillment comes only by realizing these things. I have already mentioned one or two times today that all this concept of God, we do not know God, we do not know Brahman. All our concept is vague. It is kind of symbol we are using. Our concept about God, our concept about Brahman is from the book. So that is a vague concept. So how can we translate this vague concept into reality? The God is not vague concept. God is not symbol. Or Brahman is not symbol. Those are real. So how can we translate our concept into a percept, into a real thing? That is called sadhana. So sadhana is that which convert our imagination concept into reality. That is called sadhana. So we shall talk about this sadhana tomorrow. This is introduction I have already mentioned. So we shall one by one we shall take up the first session, and in second session, how can we develop Shraddha or faith? That we shall discuss tomorrow. And then what is the main thing we need to become spiritual? That is the transformation of consciousness. What does it mean by transformation of consciousness? That we would describe, and what is the practice for that? We shall discuss it tomorrow. Now, if you have any question about whole day, please ask me. But one thing is very important. When you are asking me the questions, the important thing is that you must not satisfy your curiosity or don't try to collect some information, because spiritual life is neither to satisfy curiosity nor to collect any kind of information. This is real transformation. So always remember that we are here to transform ourselves. The main litmus test of spirituality is this: to our own transformation, the transformation of consciousness. That is the main goal of spiritual life. Always we should check that whether we are transformed or not. Swami Vivekananda said that this transformation is easily visible. We can understand that, and everyone surrounding us understand that. So this is the very important aspect. Our all questions, our all kind of queries should be from that point of view, that it is not the information, it is a kind of practice. Now you can ask me the question.
Question from Ria. We mostly look upon ourselves as a mere human beings or sinners and look up to God, look up to a loving God outside of us. How do we go from this plane to finding a God within?
Yes, that is sadhana. How means that is sadhana part. That we shall take up tomorrow. I have already mentioned in the last session that first we have to develop that spiritual heart or spiritual center. How can we develop that? I have already mentioned that if we can hold this in the Vijnanamaya Kosha or practice, mainly through practice, same time, it is very preliminary thing actually. That is why I am not dealing with these things. Every day at the same time, you have to sit erect, you have to sit in a comfortable posture. I don't want to, these are all preliminary things. I am dealing with what you will do after sitting there. That is the main thing. So it is simple practice. If you can practice with full dedication, it is a dynamic thing. It is not mechanical practice. It is a dynamic thing. So please remember that we have to realize the reality behind our imagination. That is the thing, the fulfillment. You know, in that flyer, if you go through the flyer, there is a quotation in that flyer of this particular retreat. The retreat we are now holding, the flyer of that retreat, there are 2 lines, very important lines. It is written there, fulfillment comes only by realizing the reality represented by the ideal. So what I have said, that ideal that we have is vague. What is the concept? You know, you have the concept of God. I know you have the concept of God. But what is that concept? It is a vague concept. We do not have any concrete reality behind that. So to find that reality, sadhana is required. What makes this ideal into reality? Sadhana. Sadhana makes ideal to reality. You see God in a picture, in a printed paper, or in a stone marble statue. That is only the material. But you want to find the reality behind that statue. You want to find some reality behind that printed paper. What makes you to find the reality behind that? Sadhana. Spiritual practice. What we shall take up tomorrow.
Next question. Why do we need the concept of God? Is it not sufficient to have the understanding of the nature of Jiva and the world?
Definitely we have to understand the concept of God, because that is our goal, you know. If we do not understand or cannot understand what is God, then where we shall go? That is the question, isn't it?
Yeah, the question is, why is it not good enough to have an understanding of the Jiva and the world alone?
No, it is not, because what is the goal? The goal definitely is higher to us, you know. When we set the goal never be inferior to us. Goal always superior to us. So world and others we are at the same level. So our goal must be the higher to that. And divinity is the higher to that.
Another question. What are the ways that can help us to change our own perception of ourselves to align it with the spiritual principles of Vedanta?
Yes, that is what I have already mentioned. I have already mentioned that your concept about the goal or ideal, your concept about the God, or your concept about the Brahman depends upon what you are thinking about yourself. Are you thinking about yourself, you are the spirit? Then your object or your ideal should be nirguna. But if you think that you are a human being, bound human being, then your ideal should be the personal God. So this is the main theory, actually, we have to understand. So our concept about ourselves is very clear. What we think about ourselves, each and everybody, you take the ordinary worldly example. We think ourselves very good, very beautiful, excellently expert, excellently effective. So our idea about ourselves is supreme, you know, superior. Actually, we are, because our self is definitely the best, but we do not understand that. Why is our idea is very good of ourselves? Because our nature is that we always want good, we always want beautiful, because our real nature is that. We have no way to search other way. But we cannot understand that. This awareness is necessary. We want to see ourselves beautiful. We want to see ourselves best. We are. But why? We do not know that. We want to see ourselves in that way because our self is the best. We think our external body. We always relate this thought with our external body, which is not. So this awareness is important. We must look upon us, or look upon the world, or look upon the others, God, from this perspective. That is important. This awareness, this attitude, that is important. That is the practice.
Question. Maharaj, you have just mentioned to keep a thought of Ishta while doing any work. However, shouldn't one totally uh, dwell in the given work on the hand at that time?
Surely, why not? I have seen lot of people, lot of truck driver, they drive on the freeway while listening to the music, you know. I saw lot of our mothers, they cook by listening so many things, chanting or listening discourses. So they do. So why we cannot do while doing something and at the same time remembering the Ishta? We can do that. That is the question actually.
Yeah, that's the question. Yeah.
Uh,
No. When we are doing the work, shouldn't we totally involve on that work and then to the completion?
right, definitely we can do that. Rather, we can do better work. And in that case, we do not feel that we are doing work. Take the grocer example. If we listen to a music and you are cooking, or we are listening to a music and driving a car or something, we do not feel that we are doing something. So exactly in the same way, if we remember God or we remember some good things, reflect some lecture while doing some work, rather we can do work better. And Swami Brahmananda said this. Swami Brahmananda, in his Eternal Companion, he said that if we merged 75% in spirituality, in 25% this world will be flooded by work. So we can do better work if we think our Ishta and do work.
Srinath has a comment. After knowing Jiva and world, we will come up with the question, who created that? And that creator is called God. That's his comment.
Yes, definitely. If you accept that view, that is wonderful, no doubt about that. But yes, some people are there, they have another view that this creation, this Hindu or Indian philosophy, Sanatana Dharma or Indian philosophy, never accept this creation. Creation means there was nothing, from nothing something came out. Actually, Swami Vivekananda criticized that philosophy. So, Indian concept is evolution and involution. That is the concept of creation according to Indian philosophy. So it is evolution. There was completely zero, nil, and from there, not nil, actually it's very, very subtle. And from that subtle, again something is coming out. And then again it goes back to its dormant state. So this is the philosophy, the Big Bang, the philosophy of the science of Big Bang, the concept of Big Bang, it and the black hole, it justify this concept. From very subtle, it suddenly comes out. So it is the evolution. And then when goes back, it is involution. This is the concept of creation. If you call it creation, yes, definitely it is creation. And who does this whole mechanism? Definitely God is behind that. Some power is behind that. Some system is behind that. In Veda, it is called Ritam. This principle is called Ritam.
I think this next question is, I think, possibly a topic that will be covered tomorrow. If your ideal is the nirguna, what is the practice?
Practice part we shall take up tomorrow actually. If in very short way, it is the Advaitic practice. The first point is that Advaitic concept never says do. Practice means you have to do something. Advaita always says know it. There is no practice in Advaita because knowledge, analysis. So you have to analyze, you have to understand, you have to know it. Because when you will have that knowledge, automatically you will be illumined. That is the process. So there is nothing do in Advaita. If you accept the Nirguna Brahman, analyze it, what is Nirguna? How it is connected with you. Analyze it. This analyzation, logical analysis is the practice in Advaita. So know it. There is no rituals, no meditation, nothing else. You think, and think. That is the practice in Advaita. Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Reflect it. That is the practice in Advaita.
The next question is actually repeating what you just now said. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana can be one element of developing one's own spirituality and one's own conception.
Yes, definitely. If you follow the Nirguna, if you follow the impersonal Brahman, yeah, sure.
Next question is, questioning the nature of myself, who am I or what am I, leads to silence. How is that helpful in deciding the course of sadhana? How does one tie the Nirguna Brahman to this view?
If we are silent, then we have understood it very well. You know, there will be no question, there will be nothing. Nothingness. In Buddhism, it is called nothingness, shunya. So it becomes silent, everything, then it is done. So if it is shunya, it is done. If we don't have any question, then we are fulfilled.
How do you differentiate between the concept of yourself you prefer and the concept of self you actually are?
Well, it is very simple, because if you ask me who you are, my answer is always I am such and such, Mr. that, I am Swami. So that means our question is name and form. Our concept is name and form, which we are not, our real nature. So that is why Swami Vivekananda in Jnana Yoga, Swami Vivekananda actually delivered a talk, which is called Real Man and Apparent Man. So our apparent man is our body, our form, our name, but real man, what we are within. But it is from the Vedantic point of view. But those who are following the path of bhakti, for them, definitely we have a distinguished individuality. Because we are trying to offer ourselves at the feet of the God. We are trying to pray God. So definitely that is the point of view of bhakti.
The last question I have here is, how
Yes.
can one know if one's ishta is saguna or nirguna?
You have to know on the basis of your concept about yourself. That is what I mentioned. What do you think about yourself? Are you an individual or are you a spirit? If you think you are a spirit, then obviously your chosen ideal will be Nirguna. If you think you are a human being, distinct human being, then you have to accept the personal God, because you are different from that. You are not a spirit. So our God, the concept of our God or chosen deity or ideal depends upon our concept about ourselves.
Can seek a better term for Shraddha than faith?
No, actually, in all the scriptures and everywhere, it has been used. It is not a happy translation, I have already mentioned that, but it is very closer in spirit. Faith is a very closer translation of Shraddha in spirit, from the point of view of spirit. So that is what I am using, because everywhere it has been used. That is why I am using. But I don't think Sikh. Sikh means Sikh and Shraddha or faith is not the same thing. No. I think we shall conclude.
Yeah, that's all we have, and then we can conclude.
Okay. Thank you very much for your patience of attending this retreat. Definitely we shall go tomorrow for the sadhana part of it. And I hope when we shall conclude this, because all these have very important application in our day-to-day life. We shall discuss these things tomorrow also a little bit. But yes, thank you. Thank you very much.